are the Insiders, and man, are we excited to be here today.
It's a party, baby!
There's only one way to start this show. Hey, yo. This is our show to memorialize one of the greats, Scott Hall. So welcome to the show. Kind of a impromptu thing tonight, a little different than normal. Of course, we've got Tazzy in the house. Jeff is here as well. We're going to have a couple of guests. We have a couple things to play. I know I have a clip to play from one of our community members. So a little bit different than the normal thing. And, of course, the tragic passing of Scott Hall. I'm sure all of you who are in the chat and are wrestling fans has definitely heard of it by now. Obviously, Scott suffered a hip injury, had to have surgery on that injury, and of course passed away because of a blood clot that developed. Ended up having, I think it was 4 heart attacks, which is insane. And then ended up life support, and then of course taken off life support. He actually did stay alive. I think it was, they said, about 4 hours or so after, and then passed away. So we lost listen, this guy is a legend, and we really lost a legend, and much too young. To start off, I'll just say, and I'm going to have Tazzy and Jeff give their opening thoughts as well here. Whenever I've been around long enough, and I know you guys make fun of it because I'm old, and that, you know, I deserve that. But I've been around long enough to see some of my favorites, you know, pass away and are gone. A couple that hit me more recently was Carrie Fisher. When Carrie Fisher passed away, she passed away pretty young too, and she was a big part of my childhood with Star Wars, and she's almost like my first crush, really, when I was like 9 years old. So that, and then a singer, Eddie Money. When Eddie Money passed away, I loved Eddie Money's music. I was a big fan of his. And when he passed away, it kind of hit me hard too. So I found that it's best to, you know, when it happens, you're always going to be sad. But, you know, kind of, yeah, and you're going to deal with it in different ways. Everybody does. But what I try to do is, you know, look back on the things that they did, you know, for me, for my life, you know, like with the musician, of course, the music, the movies, with Carrie Fisher. So, and of course with Scott, you know, you will always have the matches on YouTube to go back and watch, or on WWE Network, on Peacock, or however, but he'll always be here. And his spirit lives on in a lot of wrestlers today, and you'll see it, and we might talk a little bit about that later, because you can definitely see it. But Scott was a guy who, and you know, you heard Kevin Nash say this, and you probably heard, you know, X-Pac say this as well. He made it cool to be cool, and they had just said that he didn't really have to act; he just was cool. And it came out in his characters. And you know, this dude was instrumental. You know, one of the best intercontinental champions ever. Of course, instrumental in starting what could be looked at today as the best faction ever in wrestling. And yeah, so we'll talk about it. So I'm going to give the guys opening thoughts. We do have someone as a guest that is going to come in. Derek Stark. He was on our show way back. We interviewed Derek. Derek is a DJ. So we're going to talk to Derek, get some of his memories about Scott as well. So let me just welcome some people in, and then I'm going to have Tazzy and Jeff give their little opening sentiments here about Scott as well. So James Grant, hey yo, yes. Unbroken, Brandon Lewis, hello to you. James, Erase Your Mind, Alicia, hello Alicia. Everyone loves a bad guy. Big Dan is here. James Chadwick, Say hello to the bad guy. Yes. I forgot about him doing those surveys. I love that. This survey time. Love that. Absolutely love that. Yeah, James Grant says the line, of course, from his induction: "Hard work pays off, dreams come true, bad times don't last, but bad guys do." Yeah, that was great. It was one of the all-time best things on an induction, on a Hall of Fame induction. Deanna's here, Conrad's here. I see him. Mr. K9 IJLSA is here. We've got Greg in the chat. We've got Tony. Hello, Tony. Let me see, going down here. Sean Waltman's reply to someone Scott Hall called the fallaway slam the sack of shit. Scott said a lot of things that came right off his mind, and that's what made him, the legend he was too. Wes is here. Hey, Wes, how are you? Just watching before the show tonight when Mr. Perfect agreed to tag with the Macho Man in 1992 Survivor Series, and Scott was such a natural as Razor Ramon, both in the ring and on the mic. Absolutely. I don't really think he had to play the character very much because I think it was just part of him. Cheese Whiz is here. Hello to you. And hey, Sean Rousset, how are you? Okay. Jeff, you go next because I know Jeff took this hard. I know this was tough on Jeff. And again, when you're growing up and someone's a big part of your life, whether it be a relative or a family member or a friend or even an entertainer, it's tough. And so, Jeff, I'm going to let you have the floor here.
Yeah, I took this kind of hard because regardless, I know I've seen some people online say, well, you didn't know the person personally, so how could you? I'm trying not to get annoyed tonight with some of the stuff in the chat. But it's like when you watch someone, you welcome them your into your home every week. They become a part of your family. And seeing him every time we saw him on TV, with the vignettes, he honestly made being a bad guy cool. Like he made being a bad guy cool. And seeing I have this picture right here.
Yep.
It's not one that other people want, but it's what I have. So like seeing these vignettes and everything, it was cool. It was different. And I remember growing up seeing seeing so many of his matches and seeing him win the IC title. And
Mhm.
he's my IC champ. Like he's my guy. That's my, a lot of people say who's synonymous with each belt. For me, Razor Ramon, Scott Hall is synonymous with the IC title, in my opinion. And honestly, he was one of the people that inspired me to become a wrestler. I always wanted to be a heel. I remember having matches in my living room, slamming, different stuffed animals, and later on, little cousins. Sorry, my little cousins, for putting you up in the razor's edge. But that's that's what I did, and then to see him that Monday night, to see him come over to WCW, um, seeing him show up, and the famous, you know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here.
Yep.
Like that was tremendous. Seeing my favorite from WWF at the time, WWE, to see him on my favorite promotion, WCW, especially being from the South and seeing so many of their shows live and in person and everything. It was tremendous to see him over there. But I think this hit me so hard because I mean I really looked up to the guy, like idolized Scott Hall. The the NWO stuff, like I had all my Razor Ramon stuff growing up, but the NWO stuff came around the time when I was working, and I had to get an NWO shirt. And then when it became the Wolf Pack, I had to get that. I had to get an Outsiders shirt. Like I had to get all of that stuff because I idolized the guy. So, and seeing some of the rest of his story too. A lot of people may know this, but he admittedly had his struggles with substance abuse. And whether he was still struggling with that or whatever the case may be, he fought it. He fought it and battled it.
Mm-hmm.
And being someone who works in a field, seeing those kinds of struggles day to day, I know what it takes for people to battle the demons that they say they have, and it takes a lot of courage and strength. So, yeah, I mean this one really hit hard because again I idolized the guy. He was one of the three people that when I said I wanted to become a wrestler, it was him, it was Junkyard Dog, and it was Ricky Steamboat. Those three guys, and obviously two of my three are gone, and it's just tough. But yeah, I'm trying to use tonight to remember the good times. To remember the not focus so much on the loss, but focus on the fun moments, the different promos, the vignettes, the great matches that we got. I'm trying my best to focus on that tonight, so I'm not as overwhelmed by the loss. But yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, everything you said, and like I said, we'll talk more about the NWO because
oh, and I gotta say this too for people that don't know this, who don't know our origin story. Our name is because of the Outsiders.
yeah, absolutely. Yep.
That's we wanted to do a play on that, and
Yep.
that's where our name came from. So I didn't want us to get too far. I didn't want us to get too far into the episode and
Yep.
not explain that to people. Like that's when we thought of ourselves. We wanted to be the Hall and Nash of this podcast thing, this
Yep.
YouTube thing. So that's where the name comes from.
Absolutely. Yes, it does. We talked about that early on when we first started the show and got the show together. So yeah, absolutely. But yeah, like Jeff said, I mean, I had an NWO shirt as well. And look, I was a little bit older because that was the '90s. So I was in my 20s, mid 20s, probably late 20s. Yeah, I mean, that was huge, huge. Like you just don't, you guys some of you may have lived through it, but some of you may have been a little too young. But it was just unbelievable. Like week after week, it was must see TV. You couldn't miss it. And let me tell you, it was not easy because most of us, there was nothing like there is today. You couldn't watch it on multiple screens. You had a TV and you had a VCR and you had to tape one and watch the other. And many times you found yourself just flicking back and forth during commercials. So it was not easy to do. But yeah. Tazzy, go ahead, man. Yeah. What are opening thoughts here about Scott Hall?
I grew up at a time where the Intercontinental title was like the golden part of the WWE. Like I remember the Mr. Perfects, the Bret Harts, and Shawn Michaels. There came from Razor Ramon, and there's a big theme of like all four of those. There's like a big theme. Three of them were heels, and one of them was like, of course, is the face. But I remember the vignettes. The vignettes is just like, what's going on? What are we watching? I was like, and this is like when Razor Ramon first came out, this is a little bit right before Monday Night Raw. Just a tad, a little bit, just a little bit. We had primetime wrestling. I just became a fan right around primetime wrestling, and a little bit ended. And it was like Monday Night Raw, and he shows up. I'm like, oh my god, this dude is super cool. Man. It's super cool. And it's like all you see him coming into the ring, and you guys, there's no moving lights back in the day or nothing like that. It was like you see the little razors on the ground when he walked to the ring and everything like that, with the little fireworks, the sparkly fireworks, by the way.
Yeah, they weren't really big pyro back then.
Yeah. Big pyros. It was like, okay, like, all right, I like this dude. Like, okay, I like you. I like you. It's just this attitude. It's like he is the first one before Stone Cold. He was the first one that you could cheer the bad guy. And I was like, wow, I like this dude. I like this dude. It's like, and then I remember him and Shawn Michaels. One of the really, really biggest matches I actually seen. Like, I actually can like dissect it and like watch it. And it was like, wow, this match is really good. It's like you got two of the greatest of all time in the ring together in a ladder match, putting their body on the line for us. Like, it's crazy.
First ever one.
It was crazy. And then like Jeff said, the whole him showing up in WCW. I thought WWE was about to come over there and like invade WCW. I thought that was what was going on. I had nothing about the contracts and stuff like that. I didn't know there was such things as contracts in wrestling. Apparently there is. And well, you know it, do we get the NWO? We'll talk about that later, but wow, his moveset was incredible. Couple of sideways slams. Man, it was like one of those wrestlers. So it's like, oh, dude, I wish you could just wrestle forever. You know what I mean? But of course, you know, things don't happen that way. But you know, I'm gonna miss the dude because, dude, his attitude, his mic skills is ridiculous. His mic skills are ridiculous. Like, and I know I say this a lot. That psychology of Razor Ramon is ridiculous good. Like, he understands wrestling. He understands wrestling and he understands storylines. So, you know, cheers to Razor Ramon right now.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think he really had to. Listen, I don't know, you know, the whole thing of where, you know, when he was learning how to wrestle and stuff like that. But I would bet you probably from the very start he was good at promos, and I think it was probably because he wasn't really acting. I don't think he was really acting all that much. I think a lot of that came. He just seemed like he was very. And Kevin Nash said this too, that he was very intelligent, and he could just come up with stuff. And just, you know, and just get everybody into things, and you know, he could just come out with it, and it would just seem very natural. And some people have that, and some don't. So yeah, really, really just awesome. All right, we've had Derek kindly waiting for us in the chat. So let's bring Derek Stark in again. Derek was a guest on our show way back, around one time when we first started, and we brought him on. He has a radio show. So Derek, welcome. Thank you for coming out and joining us in our celebration of Scott Hall.
Hey, yo.
There he is.
How's it going, guys?
It's going good, Derek. How about yourself?
Oh, not too bad, not too bad. Like I said, you know, I mean, you know, talking about the bad guy, just growing up, I was born in 87, so around that time, you know, you were in, you know, elementary school and everything. I mean, I grew up, I had Mr. Perfect and Ultimate Warrior and all them as Intercontinental Champion, but you had Razor Ramon coming in, you know, talking like this guy from Scarface, you know, I'm gonna carve you up. And I mean, everything he did, you know, with WWE.
Uh-oh. Derek, I think we lost you.
Had the toothpick and everything like that, and
you're back. You're kind of cutting out on us, Derek, a little bit. I don't know. Maybe you're in a bad signal area. Derek might be in a bad signal area. So, Derek, when you come back, let us know. You're still in the chat, so you can just, come back in and start talking whenever you get it back. But we seem to have lost Derek. So anyway, Derek hopefully will be back. Probably he's on his cell phone, I know, so he might just be having troubles with his signal. So, all right. Well, we'll move on. Things happen. But there, we'll see if Derek gets back. We'll put him right back on and have him talk some more. All right. So Scott Hall versus Matt Hardy. Scott Hall was the guy who thought up Sting's crow look. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's awesome. Let's see. That's what I mean. I mean, how big was that? Yeah. Well, so now that you're on the subject, let's talk NWO. Because again, those of you who grew up and watched it, you'll know. Those of you who haven't been, who didn't see it, or you were too young to see it when it first happened, this was as big as it got. You had guys from another promotion. Now, we're kind of seeing a lot of that today with what they call it the Forbidden Door. People come into different promotions and things like that. That what did not happen. And these guys, and you could see you could see Jeff putting up the pictures there. When these guys ended up on the opposing show, it was insane to see Scott Hall and Kevin Nash coming there, and you could see them with Eric Bischoff. And the way, of course, that they played it off, and who are these guys? Tony Schiavone with it, the announcing, and who are these guys? What, why are they here? And week by week by week, you get a little more and a little more and a little more until it was finally revealed. The main plan of the whole thing was they were going to take the whole damn show, and they were just going to take everything over. And of course, it was Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, and then of course Hulk Hogan with the betrayal of WCW. That will be talked about as one. And again, I think I was referring to this on a show maybe a couple of weeks ago, but thank goodness we didn't have what we have today with social media. No, it's okay, Derek. You're fine. He said his Wi-Fi is bad. Said this meant a lot to me. Growing up, we had NWO merch going on in high school and did the 2 sweet signs and everything. Well, thanks. Yeah, sorry your Wi-Fi is not working for you, Derek, but appreciate you coming on. But yes, absolutely. And that's what, we're gonna discuss that. So yeah, Derek, throw some stuff in the chat and we'll be glad to read it off for you. But yes, the NWO stuff, and oh my God, did it go crazy. Of course, Hogan got pelted with all the garbage and bottles, and and then you found out that Bischoff was in charge, so he was a snake behind it. And then you had Scott Hall coming out every time they came out to the ring. It was Scott that led it, and he walked into the ring and he gave you the hey yo, and then he said, it's survey time, and then he would conduct the survey from the crowd. What I thought about this, and you guys could tell me, this had to be the first time I could remember, and it's kind of commonplace today. And again, you could say that Scott Hall was one of the instrumental people to do it. But this is the first time I can remember since I've been watching wrestling through the 80s and stuff that you had so many people in those arenas cheering for the bad guys. You never saw that. There were faces, there were heels. It's not like in the 80s, you had people cheering on the Iron Sheik. You didn't have people cheering on Sergeant Slaughter. You didn't have people until he turned face, but you didn't have that. That was not commonplace. And now it did. It was cool to be NWO. You saw, like Jeff said, the t-shirts were everywhere. You saw them at schools, and you saw them at events, and everyone had an NWO shirt. Everyone did. And oh my gosh. And Scott was so instrumental in this because he, he was the mouthpiece. He came out first. And Hulk Hogan, we all know Hulk could talk. Hulk could talk up a storm and he didn't really do a lot of that. when they first came out. Hogan kind of stayed a little in the background. Of course, he came out, but it was Scott Hall that started the shows and that started the, everything. And, but I mean, guys, the NWO was just an incredible thing and something we may never see again because of social media, because you can't keep things quiet. You just can't. It's too easy to get stuff ruined. So, Jeff, the NWO was so unique, and Scott was just integral in its creation.
I'm going to say something that a lot of people may not understand or realize. There's no Bullet Club if there's no NWO.
Nope.
Let me say that again. There's no Bullet Club if there's no NWO.
Yep.
That's how big this was. Now, the original, the OG NWO, tremendous. And even when they split off into the Wolfpack, that was tremendous.
Yeah.
And a lot of the driving force behind that was Scott Hall. And think about this. There's a reason why they had Scott Hall be the first one to show up. They could have done this all. They could have done this both at the same time. They could have waited until Kevin Nash's. They could have waited until his contract was up, and then again, that was a time where, honestly, we didn't care about people's contracts.
Yep.
We didn't want to know about people's contracts.
Nope. Nobody knew.
Nobody knew, and it didn't matter back then. It just didn't matter. So I mean, this group though was just tremendous. There's a lot of the factions that you see today, they try to recreate what the NWO. They try this to get a little bit of a spark, just a twinge of a spark, because people don't really understand at that point in time. At that point in time, like Joe said, if you were a bad guy, you were getting booed out of the building.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like, oh, I get to be cool and be a bad guy. They have this merch that I can wear. It's like this renegade rebel thing, us against the world mentality. Yeah, sign me up for that, because that was big. Like it was a big thing, during that time to really kind of go against the grain. You got a lot of gritty movies back then that were kind of against the grain.
Mm-hmm.
So it really played into pop culture as well. So I mean, just if you're a younger fan and you didn't really get to see the NWO, or if you're a newer wrestling fan and you got on the wrestling train a little bit later on in life, go back and look at some of their early stuff, because it really reflected what was going on in society.
Mm-hmm.
And they took a lot of that. And then there were people who were not wrestling fans at all, and they were sporting NWO shirts. They were throwing up the Too Sweet. They were doing, the one more for the good guys. They were taking the surveys. Conrad brings up a good point. Dennis Rodman,
the basketball player,
and Dennis Rodman at the height of the Bulls' second run of their three-peat. This was huge to have them. They had Karl Malone go against him in a match. Karl Malone and Diamond Dallas Page go against them in a match. I mean, that's how big this was. It was huge. I mean, it was absolutely huge. So, if you are a newer fan, or if you're a younger fan, I just need you to know that this group, really with Scott Hall as the mouthpiece for a large part of it, changed wrestling forever.
Yes, they did. Absolutely. I think what I remember most, and this, a lot of people know that this night in particular was probably the downfall, maybe, of WCW, or the start of it. But I will never forget the night when Goldberg, and we all know, we don't want to talk Goldberg, but listen, he was, back then, he was on his big undefeated streak. He came in, and apparently, obviously, they were building him up to be the face that takes out Hulk Hogan. Sting tried. Roddy Piper tried. Rowdy Roddy, who was holed up in Alcatraz, tried to come in and wrestle Hogan with his stinky clothes, and Hogan couldn't even smell him, and he was holding his nose. He tried to take him out. No one could, because ultimately they had a deal with Nash and Hall. So no one's taking him down. And the Goldberg gets built up, and in one night, Goldberg had to, and they made the stipulation because they were so cocky and they were so, full of themselves, that they figured it was there's no way that he could get through it. So they made him run a gauntlet, and he had to wrestle Scott Hall. So he had to wrestle Scott Hall, and if he got through Scott Hall, he was able to wrestle Hogan at the end of that night. And he beat Scott Hall. And everybody was like, oh my, because Scott, listen, at that time, Scott wasn't losing any matches either. None of them were. And Scott, I think, even gave him the razor's edge, if I remember correctly. And Goldberg got kicked out of it, which was crazy too. And I'll tell you, that move was one of the coolest wrestling finishers you will ever see, because it really looks like the way he does it and puts the person's shoulders up over him, man, when they get air behind that, it looks devastating when you hit. And I don't know if Jeff was ever in one, and he could probably tell you if he was, but they don't look like they're comfortable at all.
I'll say this. Originally, I wanted that to be my finisher as a wrestler, but just because. I mean, I love, like I said, I idolize the guy, I love the guy, so I wanted that to be my finisher. The amount of strength that you have to have,
oh yeah,
regardless of what you know about wrestling and how moves work and all of that, the amount of strength that you have to hoist someone up, get them up, and not just small guys, but guys your size or even bigger. The amount of strength that you have to hoist someone up and get them over safely without, injuring them is tremendous. And again, from a professional wrestler standpoint, the safety in which he worked, especially early on, was tremendous. It just goes to show how good of a wrestler he was.
Yeah. And I mean, again, like Jeff said, you go back and watch some of these, matches, and you see him do that, especially to a bigger dude. And when they land from that on that ring floor, you just see the whole thing just shake, and it looks devastating. It looks absolutely devastating. And so, yeah, it was just an unbelievable time to be a wrestling fan. There's great things going on now, but Scott Hall, Hulk Hogan, and Kevin Nash were the engineers of what this will never be duplicated again. Like I said, you'll see factions. There's some great ones out there, like Jeff mentioned before, but you will never see something like this duplicated the same way. They'll never sneak in like they did. And a lot of this was engineered, and they'll tell you. Sean Waltman, Kevin Nash said that a lot of this was engineered by Scott Hall. He said he was the mind behind a lot of it. So it's really insane. It really, really is. Tazzy, go ahead. You and NWO.
Like I said, I still remember just them, like, just just showing up. I'm like, what? And like Jeff said, we didn't know nothing about contracts back then. We're like sitting there like, oh, they just showed up. I'm like, I guess you could do that when you're a wrestler. You could just show up at any promotion you want to. And that's what I thought. Apparently not. Dude, the NWO faction was ridiculous. Of course, at the same time, we got DX. And it was just complimentary to each other, you had DX, and you actually had rivalry. So you had people when you go to school, you have people like, no, DX is better. No, NWO is better. Like, and they had the same color shirts. That's the crazy part. And it's like, oh my god, like who to go for? Like, go shop icons or go. And it's crazy because DX and the NWO are actually, they're the clique. It's like, so you see that, you're like, wow. But just the matches, I remember, of course, the Roddy Piper match. I was there. That was crazy. He'll just show it just in Alcatraz. It's like coming to the Cow Palace. By the way, if you ever been to the Cow Palace, just imagine a farm barn, but a bigger one. And then you're in there, and it smelled like a farm. It smelled like a farm. It's ridiculous. But man, what else? Oh man, just the amount of people that was on the NWO too. But you always had Scott Hall just leading the charge of everything with the survey, with the just with the matches. And I don't remember him losing that many matches in WCW. Honestly, I don't.
Yeah, I don't think many of them really did. I mean, and then some people in the chat are pointing out with the taser. It got a little crazy. You could kind of tell as it went on. And WCW started bringing on a lot of the veterans. So then you got Macho Man in there, and you got Bret Hart in there, and you got they just started pulling everybody in, and at that point it had kind of run its course, and that's when Jeff was saying they split and they went to the Wolfpack, and of course Sting joined the Wolfpack at that point. So it had started to get to the point where it kind of got a little crazy, a little out of control. And a lot of you guys I see in the chat remember the NWO from WWE when Vince brought them back. Mm-hmm. So that was almost like a rebirth for them, because of course WCW became defunct. It was gone. Vince bought it, and then he brought them in, and Vince of course said, I'm gonna get somebody that's gonna fix this. I'm going to bring somebody in that's going to fix everything. And Vince kept talking about this stuff for weeks and weeks. And you're like, well, who the hell is he going to bring in? And then all of a sudden you see Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Hogan show up in the NWO gear, which was gone. They had been gone. And who would have thought? Like Vince, you would never think in a million years that Vince would bring these guys back, especially as the NWO, because of what they did to his show. I mean, they gave him headaches for a couple of years at least, if not more, when they jumped to the other side. But yet Vince still saw something in this faction. Now, they weren't exactly the same when they came over, because, it's hard to run things back twice. But they still had some really interesting stuff going on. You had the thing with The Rock, and of course, which led to Hogan and The Rock, which some people say is one of the greatest WrestleMania matches they've ever seen to this day. And so you had that whole thing happen, and of course Hogan ended up turning good in that, but it carried over. And again, I would imagine too that Scott was probably a big part of that as well. It could go back and say like maybe the negotiations went through, because Vince, there were a lot of details out there that Vince was not happy with Hogan at all. So he was probably a bigger blemish for Vince than the outsider, than Hall and Nash might have been. So maybe Scott was integral in getting them back to WWE as well. So let's not forget Fake Razor and Fake Hall, said Deanna.
Sure.
Yes, NWO and the WWF, led to some great things to me. It wasn't the same as WCW, but it led to Hogan versus Rock in one of the best matches at WrestleMania. Yeah. And then he turned, of course, on Hall and Nash. Hogan turned good basically again, and then he turned on Hall and Nash. And Jody's here. Hello, Jody. How are you?
Hi.
So NWO was absolutely amazing. And again, without Scott Hall, there wouldn't have been an NWO. Jody, I don't know. I mean, I know you kind of just got into wrestling a little more recently, a lot than a lot of people did. So I don't really know that you've seen a lot of Scott's matches, but if you the mic is yours, you can say some things and whatever you think about Scott Hall.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't really know much about him just because I got into wrestling pretty recently. I know Chris has. He told me he was always one of his favorites, so he was pretty bummed about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard, like I said, when you have grown up with someone and just suddenly they're gone, and it's we all know the troubles, like Jeff said, that he went through, and of course he was working with Diamond Dallas Page, as Diamond Dallas Page worked with Jake the Snake, and trying to get him through a lot of that stuff. All right, so Moda's here. Hey, Moda. So say goodnight to the bad guy. Last time we were going to see a bad guy like that again. Listen, it could very well be. Before we get into, and what we'll do is we'll talk about. We're not going to stay really, really long tonight, but we'll talk about a match or two that we remember, and then. But let's start out by looking into the future, because I think this is interesting. When you guys see wrestlers today, who are some of the names of wrestlers that you think directly influenced them? Or it could be even someone that were directly influenced by Scott Hall. I'll start out with Ethan Page. Look at his character. He's the cool guy. He's the, he's the bad heel, but he's a cool, that's his persona. And look what he uses as his finisher. Ego's Edge. It's a tribute to the Razor's Edge. So that is going to live on in a guy like Ethan Page. And, you could definitely tell that he had influence on Ethan Page. So who are some of the people? Razor Ramon influenced The Rock. I can tell by the punches, says Conrad. Damian Priest was definitely influenced by Scott Hall. That's a good call. Yeah, I mean, with the way he even looks, the look of him with the hair, and Scott always had the wet hair, or the grease that he put in the hair, and so yeah, that's a great call. Does Scott have any kids? Says Unbroken. Moda says he has a son, I believe. Jay White says James Grant. That's a good call. Yeah, that's another good call. The cool guy and perfect as a heel. Jeff, what do you think there? Who are some people you think, or even that were directly influenced by Scott?
I don't know this to be sure. I'm going to name two, and one was recently in Impact, and the other one is currently in Impact. Because I was going to say Damian Priest, but
that's a great shout.
Kevin Owens is another, but I'm gonna say our guy Rohit Raju.
Oh, that's a yes.
Yep. Just from a mic skills, promo heavy kind of, like cool to be the bad guy kind of thing. That's one. And then another one that people aren't going to see right off, but hopefully after I explain it a little bit, people see it. The other one I'm going to say is Moose. If you think about Moose is a big, big dude, but very, very athletic. And a skill set and a move set that you typically don't see with a person his size. You can say the very same thing about Scott Hall. Think about some of those ladder matches. Think about the match with the 1-2-3 Kid back in the day. Yes, he had the very powerful move set, but he could also move with the agility of the smaller guys as well. So that's two guys kind of off the top of my head that I think you can see his fingerprints all over in their careers.
Yeah, both great shouts. I think Conrad mentioned earlier in the chat, and Jeff just mentioned with the 1-2-3 Kid. Don't forget that too. Scott Hall put over Sean Waltman. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was, before he became X-Pac, he was the 1-2-3 Kid. So, Scott put him over. So you could see why was very close with him. If it weren't for him, Sean Waltman probably wouldn't have had a career. Mark says Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. See, I could see with Seth Rollins a little bit, sure. Indirectly influenced by Scott Hall and the NWO to create the Shield and the Bloodline. Deanna says Moose. Killer Cross says Big Dan. Ospreay, maybe, promo-wise. Cross for sure, said Deanna. Scott Hall put over Chris Jericho, said Dana. He did, yep. Tazzy, any wrestlers that come to your mind that you could think of that have put, that you could see like the influence of Scott Hall?
I wouldn't say influence because all the ones that I had was all been said. But if it wasn't for Rich Ramon, we wouldn't have heels being cheered. Honestly, there would be no such thing as a heel getting cheered. Like we wouldn't get like Roman Reigns getting cheered right now or Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's the biggest one right there. Like Stone Cold, who was like bloody all over the place, cheered. It was like one of those double turns. Getting cheered. Who else? DX getting cheered. Whoever and all that. Yeah, it's like if it wasn't for him, like the thing with the heel and the face would never happen. We probably would still be cheering for the face, and then the heel be the heels. But for Scott Hall being who he is, making it like so cool to be a bad guy that you can just like sit there like, hey, I like that dude. I don't care if he's a heel or not, but I'm gonna still cheer for him. And we just get that.
Unbroken said, Hangman wears his jeans just as tight. What about Cody, AJ Styles, Austin Theory, and even Bray Wyatt, says Alicia. Disco Inferno said without Scott Hall, he wouldn't have been as big. Well, I mean, that's that's what I mean. Like names like that, like Disco Inferno was pretty much for a lot of his career was a jobber. The guy really didn't win very many matches, kind of like Johnny Swinger in Impact. And but yeah, it's really crazy how somebody said Dana said Bailey, Young Bucks, money and how they view the business. Man, and see that's what I said. Like it's an influence of one man to spread out to a lot of these companies. We heard Jeff mention Impact, of course, WWE, AEW with Ethan Page. So that's what I was saying when we kind of started the show, was that, he'll never be forgotten because his name will live on through a lot of these other wrestlers and how they conduct themselves and their move sets, the look will live on all through them. Indy Hartwell says erase your mind. National Hall changed contracts in wrestling. Yeah, don't forget that. That's very true. Listen, when you hear stories about the backstage, quote unquote backstage, when you had WCW happening, you'll hear a lot of people saying that, well, there were certain people backstage that controlled everything. And a lot of them are meaning Hogan and Hall and Nash. But they basically went into there, and Ted Turner, who didn't know a whole heck of a lot about wrestling, pretty much just handed them checks. And it was kind of a name your price thing, and they were just getting paid. And they were the leaders of that locker room, and whether some people liked it or whether some people didn't, that's just how it was. So yeah, absolutely. All right. So to close it out, let's get to matches. And let's get to we'll just go over a couple of matches that, that maybe you remembered most, about Scott Hall. So Tom Selleck had an influence on Scott Hall. He had the best stash of the decade. I would counter with John Oates, Big Dan. Did we do Gus? So have to apologize, Gus. Your video did not translate over. We couldn't get it, but I will shout you out. Gus was nice enough to try to get us a video. We couldn't get it to work. It wouldn't come over very well. So if you have anything to say, Gus, and I apologize for of course, Derek had some issues earlier. And sometimes it just, look, it happens. But Gus, if you want to shout out what you said, I will gladly read it for you because we just couldn't get your video to translate over for us to play. So please put that in. But yeah, shout out to Gus. He did send us a video. Jason Peace did too. And let me, I think Jason left for the night, but let me just put that out there. And then we'll talk about the matches with Scott. So hopefully I could find this. I think I can. Yeah. So
Chase, just I got a couple of memories from Scott Hall. One of them was Raw 25. That was the very first time I knew about Scott Hall. When he said, "Hey, yo," I was like, "Oh, that is so cool." And I've only recently watched his Hall of Fame induction, so I hope this is all good. All right, Ed. See you later, guys. Bye.
So that was
guys, it's Jason.
So that was Jason Peace. So thank you for sending that over. And yes, Jason, of course, talking about his famous saying, and then talking about the Hall of Fame speech, which will be probably one of the most remembered Hall of Fame speeches that was ever done, especially the way he finished it. So a lot of teary eyes in the audience for Scott's Hall of Fame speech that night. So. Jody, does your husband have anything he wants to say? I see your husband in the picture there.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Yeah, what's up, man?
I'm sure you guys probably already mentioned it, but mine is definitely WrestleMania 10, Ramon versus Shawn Michaels, just because that match was, I've always been a big fan of stipulation matches, and, that match introducing the ladder match just set the bar high for that, and I feel like that match just spawned all these other, the TLC matches and, all this other stuff just all stem from that match. And, it still holds up today. You can go back and watch that match. And it's still just a classic match. And, Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels just stole the show from WrestleMania 10.
Absolutely. And like we said before, the first ladder match that you saw, and that's crazy to even think about that. With how many ladder matches we've seen come after that. And that was the very first one ever.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have an NWO shirt too?
No, I never did get an NWO shirt. I got into NWO a little bit. See, I was actually more of a Monday Night Raw faithful. I would sometimes watch WCW, but I actually stuck more with WWE during that time. I got into DX and all that. But I love the NWO, but I kind of got into NWO more later on.
Gotcha. Yeah.
He's a wealth of knowledge, this one.
That's awesome. But yeah, he's absolutely correct. I mean, that match, guys, if you have not watched that, you know what? We always promise to do things and we end up never doing them because we don't get the time. We should get the band together and do a watch along for that WrestleMania.
That's a good WrestleMania. That's a really good WrestleMania.
Very, very good WrestleMania. So we should do that. You know what we could do? And obviously we have WrestleMania and stuff coming up like that. But on a Sunday, when the pay-per-views all pass, we will get the gang together here and we'll do a WrestleMania 10 watch along.
There you go.
So yeah, we'll get everybody here. We'll have a party and we'll celebrate that match and we'll do a watch along for WrestleMania 10. So we've never really done past events like that. I know there's other channels that do. We haven't done that yet, so that'll be a lot of fun.
That does sound like fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
That could be like its own little show.
Yeah,
like a classic watch along.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do that in the place of our Sunday show. But yeah, when we get past WrestleMania weekend and we get through all that, we'll do that. I think that will be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
So while we're on the subject of matches,
hi Jeff.
Hello.
And Joe and Dazzy
And Joe and Dazzy.
and YouTube.
Yeah, on the YouTube. Tazzy, any particular match that would stand out for you?
Whew, there's so many. The one with him when the 1-2-3 Kid was actually really good. Of course, the ladder match. Oh man, there's so many. I can't think on the top of my head right now. It's like I said, the dude know how to wrestle, man. Unbelievable skills. That ladder match, just to add to that, was ridiculous because there was moves in that match that you didn't see before. This is way before we start getting the TLC matches and everything like that. We didn't get to diving off the thing. Well, of course we had Shawn Michaels, of course, but we start getting movesets that you're like, oh wow. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna have to do this again in the future. And then we got the other, of course, the ladder matches in the future. I think one particular other ladder match I saw was the Rock and Triple H.
Hi.
But yeah, man. I can't think on top of my head, honestly.
That's okay. Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
let's not forget too that Scott was in TNA. So for those of you who watch Impact, Scott was in TNA, and Scott had a match with, of course, he teamed with, of course, Six Pack, who was Sean Waltman, against Team 3D. So they went up against Team 3D in TNA. So don't forget that he was a big part, and Impact put out well wishes and stuff for his family and stuff too, because he was a big part of Impact Wrestling. So don't forget that as well. Jeff, go ahead. What match or matches stand out most for you for Scott Hall?
For me, obviously WrestleMania 10, with the significance of it, just tremendous. That match was, and you can go back and look at it today. Still a great match. That WrestleMania is one of my favorite WrestleManias of all time. So I'm actually looking forward to doing a watch along for that on the channel.
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun. The other match that I don't think a lot of people talk about is, I want to say it was SummerSlam '95. Him and Shawn Michaels. That was a great match. He had some great matches in WCW. I think Sold Out with him and Goldberg. That was a really good match. I know Uncensored, I think him and Sting had a really good match. So I mean, he had some great matches throughout the years. But man, I mean, that WrestleMania 10 match was just it was tremendous. It really was.
Of the three of them, Scott was probably the one called upon to go out and deliver the big matches, the long matches, because Hogan and Nash were starting to kind of get a little bit beat up, and you really never saw Hogan be out there for a really long time. And the same thing with Kevin Nash. They had injuries and stuff that were kind of starting to pile up on them a little bit. And Scott Hall was the one who'd go out and deliver these amazing matches. I'm going to bring up a few. I have a list here that I put down, but I'm going to bring up a few. WCW Super Bowl, 1997. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash against Lex Luger and the Giant. So that is the big show. They called him the Giant, and he had the long hair, and so the tag team match with Hall, and of course Hall and Nash wrestled in a lot of tag team matches when they were in WCW. Let me see what else I have here. Of course, Shawn Michaels. Now this one was on Raw. A match against Shawn Michaels on Raw, which was August of 1994. So he wrestled Shawn Michaels versus Sting, Lex Luger, and Randy Savage. Of course, that was Bash at the Beach. And that was the infamous Hulk Hogan turn at the end of that match. So, that was when they got in there with the WCW guys, and the infamous turn when everybody, started booing Hogan and throwing stuff at him. Bret Hart in the WWF Royal Rumble, 1993. Talk about two of the best in the business. Bret Hart was absolutely at the top of his game, and of course Razor coming in and wrestling him. That was a great match. Jeff Jarrett at a Royal Rumble in 1995. So I mean, you can just go on and on and on. He really had some amazing matches in his career. Absolutely had some amazing matches. Razor versus Rick Martel on Raw for the vacant IC titles, said Conrad in the chat. Scott Hall was on the first TNA show, great tribute show. SummerSlam 1995 ladder match 2. Nice gems, Razor Ramon and 1-2-3 Kid versus Diesel and Shawn Michaels. Scott Hall even faced Kevin Nash in TNA. I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. I know they've had some matches through the years. My favorite is Scott Hall versus HBK in the ladder match for the IC Championship. Yep. Let's see what else we got. My message was, "We'll never forget you, and I wish I could have met you." Okay, Gus. Well, thank you. Thanks for putting it. Yeah, sorry we couldn't get that to work, but thank you for sending that to us. Really appreciate that. I think we should do a wrestling quiz night. That would be twos. Ooh-wee.
I would lose miserably.
I would probably get a lot of the old stuff, but I'd probably get hammered on a lot of the newer stuff, I would think. Razor Ramon versus Goldust feud. Okay. All right. Yeah, there you go. Now you put the giant Big Show image of him as a New Year's baby back in my head. Scott Hall versus The Rock on SmackDown in 2002 was so good. Rock, even before he had his match, told Scott how he was so influenced by him. I would have loved King Razor. It has a nice ring to it. Scott Hall versus HBK. Big Dan, yo, Rocket, did your daddy teach you that one, man? Scott Hall attacking Owen Hart in the locker room, trying to goad Bret Hart into the Royal Rumble match in 1993. All great stuff. It's all great stuff. And we could go on and on for a long time just talking about the man and memorializing what ended up being an amazing career. And one that really won't ever be, like I said, won't ever be forgotten. Because he's out there in a lot of these other wrestlers. And I'm sure as the years go by, and it was very touching to see the tributes, and I'm sure you guys would probably agree, the WWE that had the tributes, and a lot of the wrestlers were coming out. Of course, Kevin Owens walked out on stage saying, "Hey, yo." And we saw the tribute that WWE played on all of their shows. And the fans in the audience were chanting, "Thank you, Razor," in WWE. Of course, in NXT, they played the same tribute, and then again on SmackDown. And the fans who, listen, a lot of them were too young to have ever seen a match of Scott's, but still were out there chanting, "Thank you, Razor," and yeah. So it was just, it was tremendous, and he will be missed by everyone in the industry, but his spirit will live on. All right, so we're going to wrap this up. As I said, we weren't going to stay very long tonight. I know some of you are watching some wrestling and stuff that's going on, so we will let you get back to it. But we really appreciate you coming out with us and sharing your thoughts. So we'll just wrap this up. Jeff or Tazzy, I'll let you go first. Some final thoughts on Scott and just remembering what he did for wrestling.
Just don't forget what he did for just wrestling in general. The whole first ladder match, the first time you ever seen a heel get cheers. Part is still wasn't still in the game. Just in general, influence on the NWO. Basically, he had influence on the Monday Night Wars. Basically, it's just in general. Yeah, just a big shout out and cheers to the man Scott Hall.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's not forget, of course, his family are in, of course, all of our thoughts and our prayers as well to them in this, what is, I'm sure, a very, very difficult time for them. So hopefully they'll feel all the love that they're getting from the wrestling world. And listen, say what you will about the wrestling community. I know sometimes it can be very toxic, especially on social media and stuff like that. But usually when something like this happens, it does get people together. Whether you're a fan of one promotion or another, you all kind of come together to celebrate a man's career who really affected several wrestlers in many, many, many different promotions. Why didn't AEW do anything? I know he's never been there, but at least they could have had a graphic. I don't know. NWO for life. Yes. Kutrob. Hall should be a 3-time Hall of Famer. Yes, there it is. The sign from Jeff. They should also induct the Outsiders into the Hall of Fame. Sorry I was late. No, it's no problem. Gus, you're fine. That's why you have the network, so they can see his work. Absolutely. Even seeing Corey Graves emotional was hard to see. Yeah, absolutely. Jeff, go ahead, man.
Man, kind of what Tazzy said. Don't forget his contributions to professional wrestling. If you don't know a lot about him, I would encourage you, especially now, YouTube some of his stuff, YouTube his promos, YouTube the Razor Ramon vignettes. Those are gold. They're absolute gold. But just go back, and the best way you can pay honor and tribute to him now is don't forget his work. Don't forget his contributions. And if you really want to know what type of person he was in the business, look at some of the tributes. People wouldn't be making some of those tributes, especially some of the names that you've seen make those tributes. They wouldn't be doing that if he wasn't a real genuine guy in the business and really had a mind for the business. So yeah, go check out some of the stuff.
So many of you guys in our community changed your profile pics. I did see a lot of that. You changed your profile pics and had his picture. A lot of you changed your names to include bad guy in your names. So yeah, it's all great stuff. All great stuff. All right. So coming out of this is, like I said, we'll continue, because we will, once the WrestleMania festivities and that weekend gets done, the weekend after that is where we'll shoot to have everyone come together. Of course, Jody, her husband, and Tazzy, and anybody else who wants to join us. And we will do the WrestleMania 10 watch along. So that'll be a lot of fun. So looking forward to that. And we'll talk more about Scott Hall as we watch that match, which is one of the greatest matches you will ever see. So if you haven't, you could all come out with us and check that out when we do that. Okay. Just a bit of business before we go. We have stuff coming up, of course, this week. Jody and Jeff, Abby's tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. So we have Abby's tomorrow, so make sure you join the guys. They will talk all things, of course, Bray Wyatt and the stories that were. If you haven't heard last week's show, go check it out, because they had stories from that the convention in Albany that they all went to and got to meet the man. So go and check that one out. But I'm sure they'll have more stuff to talk about tomorrow on that show, so don't miss that. That's 6:00 p.m. tomorrow night, Eastern Standard Time. Then, of course, we will be back on Thursday for Impact Wrestling, our watch along that we do every week. There are already some amazing matches for that as well coming up this week. We have a street fight between Mickie James and Tasha Steelz for that one. So that's going to be a great show as well this week. So don't miss that. And we are inching ever closer to WrestleMania weekend, which is going to be, we're only 2 weeks, not even. 13 days away from WrestleMania weekend, and we will be here. We will have it. We are going to cover both nights of Mania, and then, of course, that one is going to be insane, because we have Mania. We have SmackDown, because we'll be doing the Undertaker Hall of Fame. So we have that, and then after that, we have an Impact Wrestling show. Which is going to go on until God knows when. And then the next day we have Mania. And the next day after that we have Mania. So we will be crazy that weekend. Probably have a lot of red.
It's also my birthday.
It's Jody's birthday. And see, that's going to be an insane weekend. It's going to be an insane weekend. So we will be here for all of that. Tazzy, let the guys know what you have coming up, because I think you're going to be doing NXT for Mania weekend.
Yeah. Do want to apologize for all the. I have been having personal issues on personal issues for the last 3 weeks. So we're back tomorrow. We're back tomorrow for the hype party. I finally got the new theme song for the intros and everything. So we all say on that now. So I don't get copyrighted again.
Yeah.
So we got that. So Monday, Tuesday, Friday, we have the hype parties. Included, and also next week, and then we are doing the watch along for Stand Deliver, which I believe that is 1 o'clock Eastern time, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's 1 o'clock Eastern time. There is also a cooking with Tassie on that day. They're also cooking with Tassie on that day. It is mac and cheese nachos.
Wow, there you go. All right.
And I think that's it. Right after that week, I might have to take a hiatus because the season starts.
Yeah, there's baseball is back here, so Tazzy will be back to baseball. Yes, yes. All right, so there you go. That's what we've got coming up in the week ahead. So lots of wrestling. We are getting ever closer to Mania. We've got an Impact thing coming up, so we're inching closer towards that. Lots of stuff going on, guys. So again, thank you so much for coming out and celebrating the life of one of the most influential wrestlers that has ever been out there, and a guy that a lot of people are never ever going to forget, Scott Hall. And may he rest well, and may he rest in peace. And we'll, again, like I said, we'll never forget. So thanks all for coming out. We really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your night. Enjoy the Crockett Cup if you're watching wrestling. And we will talk to you guys all very soon. Have a good night. Stay safe. Be kind to one another. And we'll talk to you tomorrow, actually, for Abby's Window at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Good night, everybody.